My name is Bill Michael. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development and Planning for the City of Cedar Rapids. And Mel, of course, is being modest. We are extremely excited to have him here to speak this evening. The Visual Arts Commission, I'd like to say thank you to them. And I didn't see any of the members in the audience this evening. None of them could make it. But regardless, I do want to thank them for their work in the elevation of the level of art and the cultural climate of the city. And they do a lot of work to connect residents and visitors to the community through engagement and celebration of the arts. And the Visual Arts Commission has the vision that Cedar Rapids will be the destination for visual arts in Iowa. This is the fourth of four in this lecture series. And I was speaking with someone earlier that there was, the original was done in 2015, the series, and this is a follow-up to that. The first was on November 8th of 2017. Christy Rain, who's now the director of the Mount Mercy University Library, focused on the North Wall, which was restored in 2011. Mr. Sean Ulmer, who's the executive director of the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, along with Scott Haskins, who had phoned in from California, who's a professional art conservator, focused on the South Wall, restored in 2013, and then Mr. Ulmer again gave a presentation on the East Wall, which was restored in 2015. So I, again, am very pleased to introduce our speaker, who will focus on the West Wall this evening, Mr. Mel Andringa, who has managed artist relations and operations at CSPS, a contemporary art center in a 120-year-old Czech social hall. Mr. Andringa is also the co-founder and producing director of Legion Arts, a nonprofit interdisciplinary arts organization. Together, Mr. Andringa and co-founder of Legion Arts, Mr. Herbert, have presented over 1,500 events and more than 250 exhibitions by regional, national, and international artists. Legion Arts is a partner in the National Performance Network and a member of the Warhol Initiative. Mr. Andringa is also the artistic director of the Drawing Legion, a performance company based in New York City, and holds a Master of Fine Arts in Multimedia and Master of Arts in Intermedia from the University of Iowa, and was an assistant professor in the Multimedia and Video Art Department at the University of Iowa School of Art and Art History. So with that, I will turn it over to you, and thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you. Okay, as I said, I'm going to try to. It's not this long. It's just, but I'm going to try to get through it efficiently. So I'll try not to be boring, but I'll try to read. All right. Look, I'm going to make a little apology. Start off bad with a confession that I'm not an art historian. I'm an artist and a performer. I make performances about artists and their work process, and I do this by imagining that the artist is still alive and that I'm him or her. And I don't intentionally lie, but sometimes I do what I call dithering the truth when I have to bridge a gap in my knowledge, you know. So I hope nobody's recording what I'm saying, but I know they are. So my interest in the courthouse murals began shortly after John Herbert and I moved to Cedar Rapids. I found the story of the important mural project hidden underneath a coat of whitewash irresistible. And I wrote the General Services Administration in Washington about the possibility of revealing it. And I got a firm mind-your-own-business response. They said, you know, we know they're there, but we're not going to do anything about them. There's too much controversy behind them already. Thank you. And so in 1998, I made a performance called Jury Duty about the murals, and it took me almost 25 years to actually see them. By the way, I am not taking credit for the restoration of the murals in any shape or form. I was always interested in them, but other people did that, and I appreciate their help. I want to acknowledge some of the sources that I used to make this. People like that are listed here, Greg and Leah Rosen DeLong. They wrote a great book about murals in Iowa. John Herbert went to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. and got most of the photographs that I'm using in the PowerPoint today. I also have research from the Bussey Library at Mount Mercy. And a young woman who's just contacted me and wrote a great thing. That's why this thing looks so long. It's called Politics in Paint, the Creation, Destruction, and Restoration of the Cedar Rapids Federal Courthouse Murals. Her name is Brianne Robertson. She was a student of Sandy Dias at Cornell College, and I think she did a great job with the information. If we were ever looking for another speaker, she'd be a good speaker. The Cooperative Mural Painters. On Labor Day 1935, a group of artists who had worked on Grant Wood's cycle for the Iowa State College in Ames, in the library there, met at the Granby Building to form an association to seek their own murals. Although they'd worked on Grant's murals, the artists were dissatisfied with Wood's leadership, his subject matter, his style, and his process. Basically, Grant Wood. They were, and I'm going to point them out here quickly. Robert Francis White in the tie, who was wearing the tie there, he was the most accomplished artist in the group and was probably the most critical of Wood because he understood that Wood doubted his suitability as a muralist. The other members of the group considered Grant Wood's assignments on the Ames murals beneath them, and they complained about things like John Bloom, the famous artist. He said that Grant Woods did paint by numbers for his students and assigned them menial tasks. Like Harry David Jones, who did the mural back there, was assigned to paint bricks in the Ames mural. So all those bricks were by the guy who painted the mural back there. Howard Johnson, let's see. Though Harry David Jones is sitting down in the chair there on the left. Howard Johnson is the guy sitting down on the floor there on the right. He spent long days transferring Grant Wood's drawings to the wall, but he didn't really get to paint things. And Arnold Pyle, who's not pictured here, mixed the paints for all the artists so that they would use the same set of colors. Everett Jeffrey in the bib overalls was miffed because he worked on the Ames murals, but he wasn't included in the credits, and Wood had reprimanded him for seeking mural projects without Grant Wood's permission. The others included Don Glasell. Let's see, that's him with the vest there and the glasses, standing next to Francis White, and he and other artists joined this group. It was eventually a group of about 30 different artists, and they were active from 35 through the rest of the 30s. But many of them joined it for economic reasons. They were just looking for work, and this was one of the few places where you could get public work. White and Jones publicly ridiculed Wood's corn-fed, milk-pail, rear-view mirror, folksy persona. They did this publicly. They said this sort of thing. So they were getting back at their teacher to some extent because many of them, or most of them, had been at the Stone City Art Colony, or they'd worked with him on the Ames mural in Iowa City. Well, stung by this criticism from his own students, Wood withdrew from consideration as regional leader of the WPA. The cooperative mural painters admired the Mexican muralists and wanted to paint subjects that were relevant to the Great Depression. Now that's part of the mural is up there, and it's a reference to Jose Clemente Orozco, who was one of the Mexican muralists that they liked. And they wanted to paint issues like socialism and syphilis. And so they wanted to, this is Grant Wood's version of a mural. This is John Steuart Curry's version of a mural. And this is Thomas Hart Benton's version of a mural. And you can see that they were, the artists in this room were more in the Curry and Benton side of mural making. The cooperative mural painters, artists subscribed to progressive, populist, anti-fascist values of the American social realism movement. So if you want to associate them with a movement, it's called American social realism. But they were cooperative artists, not communal ones. That is, they weren't communists. Well, come and go. All right. Edward Rowan, who worked for the Public Works of Art project in Washington, D.C., who had been here in Cedar Rapids, encouraged the group to apply to paint a series of murals for a new federal courthouse in Cedar Rapids. This is Robert Francis White. He was named the leader of the group. Robert, just call me Bob, White, adopted a leadership that was different from Wood's. He promised that the artists on the courthouse murals would make collective decisions and they would have full control of their allotted spaces. So that, I think, answers one of those questions. This is the diagram they were given of the thing, and they got to choose. I think it's over 200 feet long around the room. So he was the head of it, and as the leader of the group, he was allowed to have the main north wall behind the judge's bench. Now, that suggests, although they were cooperative, they weren't equal. Someone had to be the leader, and he tried a different leadership style, much more like make decisions together, but he still had his priorities, and one of them was his own career. So he painted a proposal for his mural depicting the two things: the presumption of innocence and the protection of society. So this was supposed to be behind the judge's bench there, and if you look, you see that's the left half and the right half. Looks like an episode of Perry Mason. He envisioned this mural would be a mural of this actual courtroom, and that the people in the mural would be actual Cedar Rapidians. Washington didn't care much for that idea. They thought it was too loaded of an idea, and that they might make good portraits of the various of people in the mural and other things. There would be a lot of local complaints. They told him, go back to the drawing board and come up with another idea. And he chose to tell the story of the region's settlement and the oppression of minorities, which we see in over there. Now, there have been these other lectures before, and so if you've been to them, you're familiar with some of these stories. I'm not going to tell all the stories again, but go to that city website, because there is good information and the recorded lectures of the people who've talked about these three walls. I'm going to talk mainly about this wall over here. Harry David Jones was given the south wall. He was probably the second most important artist, and he chose to depict the origins of regional culture in the Mesoamerican art and architecture, and agriculture. So you see the excavations and things, and in that mural. I'm sorry. I'm getting behind here. Harry Donald Jones, and then, Harry Donald Jones is the one back there, and these are the slides that John got from the National Archives. And then Everett Jeffrey was given two sections on the east wall to paint. So he painted from that door to that door on this, on this wall. And we'll talk about the other parts of it less. And his themes were like the original pairs of Francis Robert White. So Bob White was going to have, initially he was going to have the presumption of innocence, and then the protection of society. Like lock them up, throw away the key, kind of part on that half, and you're innocent until proven guilty on on this half. So it was like a pair of paintings, and Everett Jeffrey did the same thing. Vigilante justice replaced by the rule of law, witchcraft and superstition replaced by medicine and science. And Donald Glasell, on this wall, was given 4 sections. On the west wall, his theme was called Contemporary Life. Oh no, I think it had a real big it was like American Civilization. It was such a broad kind of title that he could pretty much put up anything there that he wanted to. But he seems to have focused on people at work. Howard Johnson was, well, I'm getting behind myself on these that's Donald Glasell. Howard Johnson, and actually, I believe this is a picture of Howard Johnson, this ghostly figure sitting down here in the front of this picture. This is during the construction of the murals, the painting of the murals. He was assigned to paint lunettes. Do you know what lunettes are? They're the semicircles that look like a moon, Luna, over the doors and the windows in the rooms. And although his work in the courtroom, murals, was limited, he divided his time in the courtroom with time spent designing a mural for the Federal Post Office on the first floor of this building. We don't know if he ever finished it. That's the next project, I guess, for you guys, is to see whether something exists over those mailboxes downstairs. Yep. So these black and white photos from the National Archives show the murals during the painting of the thing. You see how there's this rough wooden scaffolding all the way around the room. You see they're sketching it and painting it in different sections. I think he's sitting right in front of his lunette there. That's why I believe it's a picture of him. He also has that same haircut. But and then here they're working on this mural over here on the east wall, and you can see the kind of charcoal sketches there on the wall, and then they're filled in with paint. And there's some dispute that restoration people say these were oil on canvas, and there is a kind of canvas substrate that's adhered to the plaster walls, but there's also anecdotes of the time that say this was painted in egg tempera. And egg tempera, you use the yolks of eggs mixed with powdered pigments, and it's a very hard surface. Where lead me to believe that may be the case. That was really made them withstand a lot of the tempera sounds to us like it's something very temporary, but in fact, with egg tempera, it's a very hard, permanent thing, and it's just one step short of true fresco, which you mix the pigments into the plaster. There's a picture. You know why I believe it's egg tempera? Because the sheriff's wife, who used to come around the courtroom, everything, she used to get the egg whites after they made their things, because they wasted those and make angel food cakes out of them. Now, why would you have a story like that if they weren't egg tempera, but they were oil paint? Well, I don't know. Maybe someone who's a real art historian can tell me that. This staged newspaper photo purports to show the artist at work on the mural. That's a model there in the bib overalls. That's Howard Johnson's with his shirt off. It was hot in here in the summer. There was no AC, and there you see the windows open in some of the pictures. You know, they're trying to keep it as cool as they can. The guy sitting down on this side is Howard Glasell. He's kneeling on one knee. He's the guy who painted this, and we're going to be talking about him. And the guy sitting on the scaffold itself is Francis White. He's Robert White. He's painting this mural up here. And supposedly he's drawing from the model who's standing behind him. So I think it was a staged photo. And besides, neither Howard Johnson or Donald Glasell are looking at him from the right, are drawing him from the right angle to be way the people are in the picture. So it just seems like it was set up to, make a point. And I've been given the opportunity to talk about the west wall painted by Donald Glasell. And I don't have a lot of biographical information about Donald. He was born, I think, in Denmark, and he moved to the United States when he was a teenager. He was at the Stone City for a while, and he married a woman named Chris Glasell, and they were both WPA era artists who attended the Stone City, and he had much of his life where he was a commercial artist. And if I don't want to belittle his style by saying that he was an illustrator, but those look like illustrations to me out of Collier's magazine, or Look or Saturday Evening Post kind of things. They're very good illustrations. He worked for a puppet making company somewhere in Iowa. He worked. He did have a job for a while at the. He spent a lot of time in Dubuque, I think, at the Dubuque Art Center. There is a collection of his work in the Dubuque Museum of Art. So if you want to find out more about him historically, then also go to that page on the Bussey Library page, which has a very good biography of him, and I don't feel I need to recap all of it. There he is. That's a little bit older photo of him, and this is one of his paintings. And if the other cooperative mural painters' work is reminiscent of Thomas Hart Benton, Glasell's is reminiscent of John Steuart Curry, his circus paintings, and then also, if you know Marvin Cohn's work, there's some similarity to those sideshow paintings, and of course that circus idea was shared by not only lots of the Midwestern artists regionalists were interested in circuses, state fairs, sideshows, community concerts, little public acts of things, and it continued all the way to Byron Burford, who was Grant Wood's assistant, and his interest in carnivals and things. So this is the series as they were photographed after the murals were painted for documentation purpose, and they are. We have the advantage of not having to look at slides here, but we are all fixated on TVs. So we can look at the series up here. They include people at if you could read backwards, the community cooperative store, a food co-op, where a farmer is meeting a city dweller, and his wife is shopping, or someone's shopping for what looked like Hostess Twinkies. They're at the food co-op, and then you have a relief line. This old man, I believe, is in looking for a job, looking for work, as other people waiting behind him in line. And there's a woman telephone operator and a woman at the desk helping people find jobs. And then you have an architect and construction workers. We're skipping over the lunettes for now. We have, let's see, there's the construction workers, and there's firemen and policemen, government employees, and other citizens, and the disasters of war. Now, that's kind of seems out of place to me, but we'll find out why that's there. In, I believe it was 2015 was this last wall done? No, 2016. 15. It was done it was finished in 15. So they uncovered the murals this way. The federal government, when it ceded the building to Cedar Rapids in exchange for property for the new federal courthouse, had some requirements on it, and one of them was addressing Mel Andringa's. No, I can't give credit for this. Well, was that they wanted to see that mural at least uncovered. And then the city, rightly I believe, went to the effort to get these other ones revealed. They did that one first, a second, they did that one third, and this was the fourth one. And then they revealed them this way. Now, those are just pictures from the of what you're able to see in fact above them. And this was done through a series of, this wall was done with a series of donations from the following donors. And thanks to their contributions, the murals or sections were restored in 2015, and the real and imagined controversies of the past were replaced by a living artifact, something you can see and you can make your own opinions of. Now, I became really interested in some of the changes that were made in this mural from the time that it was conceived till the time it was finished, because they had to make a proposal like Bob White did. He had to make a proposal, and if Washington D.C. didn't like that, they would say, go back to the drawing board, start over again, and do something different. And I'm going to expand my charter a little bit and make observations about changes in the whole cycle that took place between the original sketches and the finished product. I've already mentioned the content differences between White's proposal and the other changes in the design as well. You see, it seems to me, if I look at it, Robert White not only changed his design, but he changed his style in between the two series. Now look at the difference between them. Like I said, that first one looks like a film noir version of a Perry Mason episode, and down below is what he actually painted on the wall here. Much more dynamic, lots more figures, much more active of things. The simplification, Howard Johnson's lunettes follows the same thing. See, those are sketches that he made. That little sketch of some, Romans, S-P-O-R is it's like something to do with Roman history. And then when he did his more finished sketch for it on the lower left hand, you see he kind of made 3D versions of it. They weren't just outlines. But when he put it on the wall, look how he came up with such a different thing. It's not like a detailed a grouping of a whole bunch of people. It's like just one figure in a very dramatic kind of architectural way that it relates to the building. It almost acts like push pins or some kind of buttons holding the whole wall together from the confusion of figures and others, and the activity of the rest of the room on either side. Changes were also made that weren't approved by Washington. And those to me are the most interesting ones, because I have to explain why they would get this approved and then they would do something different on the wall. I wanted to know whether it was just their socialist agenda, or was it they're just kind of tweaking the nose of Washington. You get what you get when you get it. And Glasell's, for instance, so here you see Glasell's sketch. It's kind of hard to read there, and then his finished painting. But you see in that corner over there where the food cooperative is, there was a picture of a guy running a linotype machine, a printing machine. And it looks to me what actually happened is that was moved over to Donald Jones's panel there. And you see the printing press over there, and the man reading the newspaper seems to have been about freedom of speech or something like that. And then the food co-op was sort of inserted over there, and we'll see why I think it was done. In this last panel, what we call the war's devastation or the aftermath of war, was originally a panel of a worker with a lunch pail going to a factory. And then he changed it to this very dramatic scene of there's a decapitated person in that in that mural. It looks like the aftermath of World War I, or even a reference back to the Civil to the Civil War. Somewhere along the line, these elements were replaced by the community co-op and war's aftermath. At first, I thought these changes in the mural were made by rebellious artists chafing over Washington's oversight. I presumed this because of the insertion of charged imagery like the war cannon, and which seemed out of place. And the other one that's really interesting is that last panel on that side, which has always been kind of controversial. This is what it originally looked like. People in a theater looking at a big movie screen, right? Washington thought it was maybe would be too specific to a particular actor or something like that. So that it was replaced in the sketch they sent to Washington that was approved by a family going into an arcade or a movie theater. And this is what he painted on the wall. A doctor giving an examination to a patient, a naked man, and the headlines on the paper say, "Sweden defeats syphilis, play ball," which I think was kind of sophomoric humor, but it was a way that they, that he made a point that was not approved by the thing. So I thought this suggested that these were rebellious inclusions in the mural. On the other hand, this was originally in that corner over there in the sketch. And it was a group of protesters. See, they're holding the placard sign there and raising their clenched fist up in the air, and it's replaced by an architect, a farmer, and a welder. And in some ways, that belongs over here with the people that, the laborers over on this side of the picture. It doesn't have any particular meaning, at all right there, and it certainly doesn't fit with the rest of the mural by Everett Jeffrey. So I now believe that the changes in the mural were done for stylistic rather than political reasons. And there may have been some pressure from Washington to change things along the way as well. You can imagine the difficulty if you were, it's like herding cats. When you get 5 artists in the room and they all get to have a part of the picture, how are you going to hold that composition together? And you've got to make some people have to give a little, they've got to be cooperative. And that's the idea. The cooperative mural painters made some changes for stylistic reasons. You have, for instance, White's painting is probably the most social realist of the group. You've got stories of the suffering of the Native Americans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Everett is the most expressionistic. Look at the distortions in the faces. Either he has limited figure drawing abilities, or he is intentionally distorting his figures like El Greco to give an expression to the figures. Jones's work is the most abstract. Now, it's not literally abstract, but it's the most stylized, and you see, a lot of it is kind of design of the murals back there. That angular part there with the corn stalks, or this, matching this column in the middle with the dragon and this sort of thing. These are kind of abstractions of his idea. And then Glasell's magazine illustration kind of work over here, which in some ways is the easiest to read, the easiest to understand. And then Johnson's Art Deco Modernism. It's like streamlined design from from the 20s and 30s. It seemed to me, as I looked at these pictures, and again, I'm doing this as an artist, not as an art historian. I can't write what needs to be to explain what happened in there. But as an artist, I'd say the corners of this room are liminal spaces. That means they exist between one state and another state, and they're kind of in flux. And for one thing, in order to see the murals, you have to reorient yourself. So those corners become a point where that transition takes place. And if there's a dithering to my truths, there's a dithering in those spaces that's trying to blend the two together, and there's a little vibration there in the corner that makes it happen. And specifically, if you have two different styles and you need to integrate those two different styles. I've come to believe that White and Jones persuaded Everett and Glasell to cooperate on the transitions. But despite their teamwork, not all the artists are represented equally. In keeping with the subordinate nature of the side walls, changes were not made to White and Jones's panels. And they were made in that one, and that one, all on either Jeffrey's or on Glasell's panels. Okay, let's look at those. So this is that corner over there. The tenement becomes there. Now, if White had really demanded the kind of attention, then White would have done that panel. And that panel does not, look at the figures in that picture. Those aren't Everett's painting. That's not Everett's painting. Look at how clumsy he is. This little kid on the operating, he's just a puddle. He's just a little lumpy mattress of flesh on that on that thing. It's not there's not good design there. Well, that same guy didn't paint that thing over there. My guess is that White just said, I want the transitions to my mural to be right, and White makes right, and so he painted that war's devastation to lead into the teepee there, and he painted that one to kind of get out of the tenements to a future of someone, a kind of optimistic idea of what the future might be after the Depression. Okay, let's look at the next one. Oh, I seem to keep turning it off. Oh, there we go. So now look at how nicely those two panels go there. And you got this strange geometric figure. They call it a mandorla. Usually Christ is in it in medieval or Renaissance paintings. That oval shape like that. Where do we see that elsewhere in the picture? That's in Jones's Abstraction. I believe Jones, if he didn't paint that thing, because I think they're painted as clumsy as Everett's, I think Jones at least told him what to do in that corner to transition to his picture. Now, as I say, these are suppositions. I'm making some speculative ideas here, but I have a feeling Harry David Jones said, we've got to make that little section be like that, and Everett went along with it. And then we got this corner. See, I believe here's a case where Harry Jones did agree to move the painting or the printing press to his part of the mural, but I still believe he did it. And then that left Glasell free to as a kind of compensation prize, to consolation prize, to paint something else in that little panel there as a consolation for also the changes in that last one, which I believe was also done by Francis Robert White. It was doing there. All right, finishing up. These opinions are based on my observations as an artist, and I apologize if I'm sounding presumptuous. I may have blended history with my story, but then history can be rewritten as mystery, and history is never finished, but my talk is. And I will leave to the next chapters to be written by the historians, unless you have some questions that I can respond to, and if you don't, then I'll keep talking for a couple minutes. Okay? Anybody have anything to say? Yes. Oh, thanks.
If you would, I'm going to come around with the microphone so we can record questions.
I have a question.
We're going to start right over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said this corn over here seems a little incongruous with the rest of the theme. How did that corn get in there with the art? You know, the ancient.
Well, the belief that the belief, or whether it's historically based or not, that that corn was imported to the Americas, to North America by the Indians and Mesoamericans, and so they wanted to say art comes from Mexico, and corn comes from Mexico, and we should study their cultures, document their, do archaeological studies and so forth in Central and Mesoamerica.
In this corner, with the community store, in the picture, it looked like they were darker skinned, where it looks like somebody is lighting them up. Can you tell me if that did happen?
No. There's.
Or is it the picture that they took?
I'm not sure which picture you're talking about, but the original picture there was of a linotype machine printing press, and then it was replaced by this one, which is the people shopping and meeting the farmer at a co-op food thing, where the farmers brought their work to sale directly to people in urban situations.
I was talking about the people that when you showed the picture of that part of the mural, that the people were darker skinned than they are now.
I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what I mean. What you're describing was a slide that sort of had people being locked up and so forth in the courtroom on the front wall. But this wall, they don't. Though that picture where the guy was in handcuffs or something.
No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm listening.
Somebody explain it better.
Okay. What?
I'm trying to be politically correct.
Okay, in your presentation, you showed a kind of like a charcoal, or this way? Okay. You showed a charcoal sketch that preceded the actual painting.
We can certainly go back to them.
Let's go back to that.
So if we go back way, let's see.
Right there.
Yep.
If you look at the three people, they appear to be Afro-American possibly, or maybe it's just the media.
I think
the
it's mainly
media.
the difference between a black and white photo and the color mural as it exists. There's no change in those, but the black and white values of their faces may possibly look different.
Okay, so that's actually the same image.
It's actually the same image.
In a black and white
Yep.
photo, rather than a sketch.
It hasn't been
for the
restored or
image.
changed in any way.
Okay,
No.
does that help explain it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm glad we sorted it out. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to make a couple of suggestions to the city staff and anyone else who might have, like I, be really interested in public art in Cedar Rapids. One thing is Howard Johnson. He's the guy who did the lunettes. He's from Cedar Rapids. He's not very well represented in here. We don't know about his post office mural or his designs for it, but he would be an interesting subject of talk, because he was in 3 of the most controversial murals in Iowa. He was in this one, which was a big controversy, but painted out. He was also painted with, I believe, Jones. He painted some murals for the Iowa State Fair that people complained about the corn and the farmers, and one of the guys was using a sickle or something like that, and with his left hand, and they thought, oh, that was commie, and various other things, and people were watching them do this mural because it was at the state fair, and they were complaining left and right over every part of the mural. Finally, the state fair cut it up and made benches out of it. There was also a mural which I had never heard of until I did just a little biographical research on Howard Johnson. Does anyone ever seen a picture of this building? Now, you'd have to have seen downtown Cedar Rapids before the federal courthouse, because that was on the site here. No, I'm sorry. Originally there was a building on the site where the federal courthouse is that was torn down for the federal courthouse. And it was replaced by this building that had this huge, it was like a mission. It was called the Sunshine Mission. And right after they finished the murals in this building, Robert White, Donald Jones, Howard Johnson made murals in that building. And they were controversial because they depicted Bible stories with people in contemporary clothes. So like the Good Samaritan, things like that. And the ACL sued them because they were using government money to forward religious ideas. And eventually that building was torn down. I've never been, I've looked a little bit, but I haven't found any pictures of that mural. It's another thing to do. So Howard Johnson, he's an interesting character. Some art historian could make a great study of his involvement in controversial murals and add, if we could find pictures of those murals and maybe even the building's now a parking lot, but if we could, maybe some church would like to take on the job of recreating those murals. I'm not going to say restoring because they don't exist. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Oh, yeah.
Okay. My question has to do with the lunettes, and I noticed on the west wall there, 3 men. On the east wall, I'm not sure what they are. They look like they're medallions or coins or something. Can you tell us?
Yeah, well, the thing is, those registers were there in 1936. So he had to work around that. He couldn't really put a little face on either side of those registers. It just didn't work very, very well. So they kind of relate to what's opposite them. So that kind of scroll is more the kind of thing that a Roman officer would have, or judge would have. These tablets, the 10 Commandments, this is Moses over here. And that book there is, this guy has a bound book on his table. I think originally that was going to be Benjamin Franklin over there. I think there was a picture of it next to the canon. And it was going to be Benjamin Franklin, and then it was going to be some old-timey judge. And then I think this is actually a picture of a judge that had just made a decision that the lefties thought was a good one, and so they lionized him on the on the wall there. The other thing is, underneath this nice drop ceiling, there's a coffered ceiling that really would add a lot to the architectural elements in this room. I know it doesn't fit with the TV screens and the nice things particularly well, and it probably gives better light than the old hanging lights that used to be in here. But I'd also say, for architectural reasons, this would be it would be really interesting to restore the ceiling in this room too, instead of looking like my parents' basement. No, it's fine. It's perfectly well done. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's a modern touch that that does withdraw from the panelings and the other things in the room. Yep.
Does that mean that above the drop? Does that mean that above the drop ceiling there may be more artwork?
No, but it's architectural. You can see it in the picture a little bit. You know, you got plaster work and things like that make a kind of interesting. They call it a coffered ceiling because there's lots of little separate places like all along the wall paneling.
You can see the edges of it around the outside of the room.
The other thing is that I know that they're restoring the Granby Building. You know, they had their first meeting in the Granby Building. Artists had their studios for many, many years there. They still do have their artist studios in the Granby Building. Now, I know it's going to be luxury condominiums where their studios were, but you know, if we as a city want to be responsible to the history of the community, we have to make some acknowledgement of the things that took place in these famous buildings, the uses of them. You know, just like CSPS is a community hall like it was in the 20s, I think when we look at these renovations of buildings, we don't just need to make, you know, $1 million nice apartments for people. We could think, what does architecture mean? What were its possible uses in the past, and how do those uses translate to today? Okay. Anyway, thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
So we'll leave the room open for a little bit if you want to walk around and look at the murals some more, and thank you all for coming. Good. Granby Building? Which one is that?
What's that?
Which one's the Granby Building? Which building is the Granby?
The Granby Building is by, it's above Guarantee Trust. Isn't that what it's on the corner of 2nd, 3rd Street.
Okay, yeah.
3rd Street and 3rd.
Yes. Oh, yeah.